They said the Riverlands bled red and that the lions roared from every hill. But Robb Stark listened to a quieter sound, the scratch of a quill as he traced roads west on a stained map. If we cut the lion's purse, the claws soften, he told his lords. Catelyn's mouth tightened, yet she did not gainsay him. The great John grinned like a bear before honey. Roose Bolton's eyes were pale and unreadable. The plan was simple to speak and hard to do. Turn not south to relief in sieges, but west, straight for the Golden Tooth and the fat country beyond it. They crossed at the Twins after paying Lord Frey's price in oaths and hostages. Word went out that Robb rode to Riverrun. Banners flapped that way to mislead scouts. But the real host moved by broken lanes and shepherd tracks. Wolflight fast, screens of outriders under Robar Royce and Dacy Mormont brushing away prying eyes. Seer Brynden Tully guided them to the foothills, to a teeth-shaped promontory of rock that bit the sky, the Golden Tooth, where the gold road squeezed through the stone throat of the world. By day the pass looked impregnable, a gatehouse bristling with crimson and gold. By night it breathed differently. Miners from Seaguard who'd swung picks since boyhood showed hidden seams in the cliffs. Old smugglers' shelves, they whispered. Robb chose a handful Smolgen, Umber Mage, Mormont, Jory Castle's cousin Martin, and half a score of the silences from House Manderley. He went with them. Grey Wind went too, padding over chalk and scree, a shadow that made stronger men walk softer. They climbed in the moon's thin milk. Owls chittered. Below, Lannister sentries laughed about. A camp cook and tossed dice. When a stone skittered, a sentry turned. He saw only eyes, green and ghost-bright, before the wolf was on him. Steel whispered. A winch was cut. A chain groaned. The inner sally was theirs. Smalgen heaved, mage-hued, and the postern gate creaked open to the night. Trumpets blared from the dark as northern spears poured in like a river released. Answered the first Lannister line, stumbled from pallets and benches into a wall of shields and heather-feathered pikes. Robb fought where the press was thickest, a boy with a sword who moved like a memory of the old Wolf Kings. The gatehouse fell by torchlight. The dwarf-sized murder holes went silent. The drawbridge shuddered down. At dawn the golden banners drooped on the battlements. The pass lay open, the gold road a ribbon uncoiling toward Lannisport and its granaries, treasuries, and ships. Robb stood with wind in his hair while ravens were loosed, one to Riverrun, one to White Harbour, one to Pike with words Theon had begged to carry. Raid the Lion's Coast now and share the spoil. Catelyn arrived with the main body, saw the smoking gate, and for a heartbeat the tightness left her face. "You've woken the lion in his den," she said. "Then let him claw at shadows," Robb answered. He ordered Mage to take light horse west to harry forges and mint wagons, Roose to hold the pass like a steel cork in a bottle. The great John too readied the hammer for whatever an angry Tywin would throw back through the hills. Before noon, villagers brought bread with shaking hands and news in faster whispers. Gold caravans, soft-bellied and slow, a granary near Ashmark, a septuagenarian castellan who loved his wine more than his duty. The north moved again, lean and laughing, hungry for plunder they could not eat, but that the lion could not live without. Behind them, the fallen gate and torn crimson told a new story in the stones. The Riverlands still bled, yes, but the wound now ran the other way. The gold road stretched wide and rich before them, its ruts worn deep by wagons of coin and grain bound for Casterly Rock. Robb Stark's riders, struck first at a caravan of men silver-bound east. Dozens of mules laden with coin clattered to the dirt, their guards scattered by the howl of grey wind and the spears of the umbers. Gold dragons spilled across the road like autumn leaves. "Let Tywin fight with stones," then laughed the great John, scooping handfuls. But Robb ordered most of the coin hidden, buried in caches or loaded into his baggage train, for he knew hungry men fought better when their purses were fat. The farther they pressed, the softer the land grew. Golden fields bent under the summer, wind dotted with fat cattle and tilled vineyards. Villagers rang bells and hid in their septs, only to find northern riders demanding grain and shelter. Robb forbade wanton killing. "We are wolves, not reavers," he told his bannermen. Still, some blood spilled. Mage Mormont burned the storehouses of a manor that had flown a crimson lion, and Roose Bolton hanged a castellan who refused him entry. Whispers spread that the boy king of the north walked with a giant wolf, sparing the meek but striking like thunder at the proud. Scouts rode back with news that Seer Stafford Lannister was mustering raw levies near. Oxcross Robb did not. Give him time. In a night march, guided by shepherds who knew every fold of the hills, the direwolf host descended like storm clouds. When Stafford's camp woke, it was already aflame. Spears shattered green levees, hounds tore loose among tents, northern horns wailed over the chaos. Stafford himself died clutching a banner, cut down beneath the hooves of Robb's outriders. By dawn, 3,000 Lannister recruits lay dead or fled, their arms abandoned, their morale broken before it had been born. At Oxcross, the wolves captured herds of horses and stores, enough to feed an army for weeks. The men feasted on cattle, the smiths hammered stolen steel into fresh blades, and Robb's captains pressed the surviving levies into service, sending them east with empty purses and bitter tongues to spread tales of the young wolf who struck from nowhere. To the west, only Lannisport stood untouched, fat and gleaming by the sea, its wealth heavy as ripe fruit. But every mile Robb marched deeper into the Lion's Land, the danger grew. Tywin Lannister's host still camped at Harrenhal and Ravens, surely carried word of the slaughter on the Gold Road. Robb knew the old lion would turn, red with fury once he smelled blood near his own gates, and so he pushed his riders harder toward the coast, toward the city where gold met salt water. Lannisport glittered beneath the sun like a goblet of wine, full of ships, markets, and the sound of hammers on coin. To Robb Stark's men, it looked less like a city and more like a prize waiting to be claimed. His captains argued by firelight the night before. The great Sean roared to storm the walls. Roose Bolton murmured of patience. Catelyn Stark urged restraint. Robb listened, then said quietly, "We cannot hold the rock, but we can make its shadow tremble. Burn their ships, and the lions cannot roar across the sea." Before dawn, he loosed Mage Mormont and 1,000 light horse upon the coastal villages, torching warehouses and cutting down the garrison posts that lined the shore. Smoke rose, black against the sky as fisherfolk scattered inland. Meanwhile, Robb sent Blackfish Tully and a hand-picked force to Lannisport's harbour, slipping in through sewers and sally posts shown by a guildsman bitter over a lost son at the Green Fork. When the bells of the sept told morning prayer, the harbour erupted. Pitch flasks shattered against sails, fire leaped from mast to mast, and the wind caught it hungrily. Lannisport's fleet, pride of the west, turned into a forest of flame. Masts cracked like thunder, and ships that had traded in Old Town Bravos and Pentos alike sank into the bay with their cargo still burning. The city panicked. Merchants dragged coffers into the streets. Septons rang holy bells until smoke choked them, and crimson-cloaked guards tried to form ranks only to be driven back by a sudden sally of northern riders through a breached postern. For 3 hours, chaos ruled. Then the wolves pulled back, driving captured wagons of supplies and gold into the hills, leaving behind blackened piers and a harbour thick with ash. From a ridge, Robb watched the smoke curling into the sky, taller than any tower of Casterly Rock. Now, Tywin must come, he said, half to Grey Wind, half to himself. His war was no longer only for Riverlands' relief, but for the very pride of House Lannister. A lion could not abide such a wound. Without striking back, the news flew on raven wings to Harrenhal, and with it the summons of vengeance. Tywin's host stirred like a beast roused from slumber. In burning Lannisport, Robb had lit a fire that would call the lion west. But the boy king did not fear the lion's charge. He had laid his snares, and he meant to draw blood again before the game was done. The Crag was no Casterly Rock, but it was still a seat of power on the western coast. Its towers jutted from cliffs like jagged teeth gnawing at the sea, and House Westerling, sworn to Lannister, held it in pride. Yet when Robb Stark's host appeared outside its gates' banners, snapping grey wind prowling, and the smoke of Lannisport still visible to the south, the Westerlings wavered. Lord Gowan, Westerling, old and ill, sent his son Rollum to parley. He found Robb seated beneath a pine, his direwolf at his side and his mother nearby, stern as stone. "Your house has ever been loyal to the Rock," Rollum declared, though his voice shook. "Will you burn us as you burned the harbour?" Robb's answer was quiet. "Bend the knee, give me safe harbour, and your halls will stand. Refuse, and your people will starve when the lion cannot feed them." The Westerlings looked to their stores and their frightened small folk, then back to the banners arrayed beyond their walls. By nightfall, the Crag's gates swung open. Robb rode in with a small guard, taking bread and salt at their table. The Westerlings bent the knee, swearing fealty now to the king in the north. It was here, in the halls of the Crag, that Robb first laid eyes on Jane Westerling, a girl with soft eyes who nursed wounded men in the castle's yard. She brought him water after a long day's ride, her hands steady though her voice was soft. Catelyn watched her with unease, for she saw how quickly Robb's gaze lingered. But the young wolf was king and conqueror now, and his heart was young still. With the Crag sworn, Robb gained not only a foothold on the coast, but also a beacon to wavering bannermen of the west. Small lords and landless knights began to trickle to his banners, tired of paying the lion's heavy levies, eager to strike back now that Lannisport smouldered. It was a gamble. Every oath sworn here meant deeper enmity with the Lannisters, but it also meant Tywin would find not just wolves in his land, but lions turned against him too. Still, ravens whispered that Tywin's army was on the move, marching west with all the fury of a storm. And Robb knew that however many castles bent the knee, a storm would drown them all if he misstepped. So he began to plan anew, using the Crag as his lair, waiting for the old lion's shadow to fall where the snares lay hidden. The west bent and burned under Robb's march, but victory bred unease. From Pike came troubling word. Balon Greyjoy had called himself King of the Isles again. Theon Greyjoy, riding at Robb's side since the crossing of the twins, pressed him hard. "Strike now," he urged. "Send word to my father. Let him raid the Lion's coast, as we spoke. He will see the wisdom in alliance." But Catelyn's face hardened. Greyjoys keep no faith, but with their own. To trust them is to invite daggers at our backs. The lords argued long. The great John, said ironborn, were fit only for drowning. Roose Bolton, voice cold, mused that a raid on Lannisport's ashes would draw Tywin's wrath from them sooner. Robb listened, torn. Theon swore on salt and steel that his father would keep faith if given the chance at Plunder. At last Robb sent ravens to pike, offering Balon Greyjoy the lion's western coast as prey, so long as the Isles bent knee to the king in the north. But even as the letters flew, doubts gnawed at him. Grey wind paced the Crag's halls at night, restless, as though he scented treachery drifting across the sea. Word soon returned. Balon's sails had left harbour, but not for the Westerlands. The ironborn had struck the north instead, seizing Deepwood Motte, burning villages along the stony shore, and sending longships prowling toward Torrance Square. Theon's face paled when he read the raven. He means to crown himself king on your ruin, Catelyn said. Her voice carried no triumph, only sorrow. Theon begged Robb for ships and men to retake his home, but the young wolf clenched his jaw. The north is my birthright. No reaver will hold it while I draw breath. Yet I cannot turn back now, not with Tywin marching here. We will bleed the lion first, and then we shall deal with the kraken. The men muttered in their tents. Some longed to ride home to defend their kin. Others argued the Westerlands gold would buy them strength enough to retake the north twice over, but all knew the game had grown sharper. Robb now fought with two enemies, one across the hills and one across the sea. On the dawn, when scouts reported Tywin's vanguard approaching the Red Fork, Robb looked westward, where smoke still rose faintly from Lannisport, then northward, toward the unseen shore where Crocken struck. He had one glory. Yes, but glory did not guard the hearths of Winterfell. The ravens that reached Riverrun carried more than smoke and rumour, they carried the weight of war. Edmure Tully, newly returned from his captivity, read them with a frown. Deep enough to cut stone. His nephew was winning battles in the west, yes, but the Riverlands still burned. Seer Gregor prowled with his raiders, Seer Amory sacked without mercy, and the folk of the Trident cursed their absent king while clinging to ruined halls. When Robb returned east with part of his host, the men cheered to see him ride beneath the trout and direwolf. They told tales of Lannisport aflame, of Oxcross slaughter, of Tywin forced to turn back from Harrenhal with fury in his heart. For a brief moment, the Riverlords dared to hope. Robb set his camp at Riverrune's walls, where banners of black fish and grey wolf snapped side by side. He held council in the great hall, Catelyn at his side, the blackfish grim with pride. Edmure pressed him. The Riverlands must be shielded, not just avenged. Tywin comes east again. Harrenhal is his lair, and the fords his claws. Hold the crossings, and we may yet keep the lion caged. The boy king agreed. Riders were sent. To guard the Red Fork, the Blackwood archers took the high banks, and the Umbers fortified stone fords with timber and iron. Robb's mind was sharper now, tempered by raids and betrayal. We cannot outnumber Tywin, he told his lords, but we can outthink him. Still, whispers haunted the campfires. The Greyjoys still held northern shores. Winterfell lay unguarded, and ravens flew with no word from Bran or Rickon. Some Riverlords muttered that the Wolf King chased glory in the west, while his own hearths froze. Robb heard them and said nothing, but at night he traced maps with Grey Wind's muzzle on his knee, eyes dark dot. Then news came that chilled even the boldest. Tywin Lannister had turned east again. his host swollen with new levies, marching not toward Riverrun, but toward the Black Water, where another war brewed. Stannis Baratheon's fleet already moved against King's Landing. If the lion meant to aid the boy King Joffrey, the game stretched wider than Robb's snares could bind. At Riverrun, the lords debated deep into the night. Some urged pursuit, others counseled patience. Catelyn's voice was the quietest yet. It cut deepest. Every war you win, Robb, births another you cannot fight. The Kraken has your coasts. The lion marches to another throne, and the north waits for its king. Robb looked upon the Tully banners, the direwolf, and the faces of the men who had bled for him. Then I must choose which war to fight first, he said. His hand closed over the pommel of his sword, but his gaze was far away northward, always northward. At Riverrun, banners still flapped, but the mood was heavy. The victories in the west had come at a Costawin was not broken. The north lay exposed, and the river lords were weary. When word came that House Frey demanded Robb honour his marriage, pact to one of Lord Walder's daughters, Catelyn pressed him hard to remember his duty. But the Crag had left its mark. Jane Westerling's kindness, her soft words as she tended the wounded, her steady hand upon his brow. In the silence of grief and fatigue, he had sought her comfort and bound himself in a way no alliance could undo. When Catelyn learned of the secret vows, she spoke no curse, though her eyes seemed older than stone. "You've won the West, and lost the Freys," she said, "and they are not a house to forget insult." Robb clenched his jaw. The Freys are river lords. They will not betray their own blood. But even as he said it, unease shadowed his words. Walder Freys. Pride curdled to venom when news reached the twins. To him, the broken pact was a wound deeper than battle. He sent ravens laced with venom to Tywin, to Roose, to any who might hear. The Wolf King's word was worth less than ash, and in secret, a plan began to take shape, one that would make even the proudest lord remember the price of slighting a Frey. Yet for the moment, Robb still wore victory. The Riverlords hailed him as king in the north and trident alike. The great John toasted him with horns of wine, and songs spread of the young wolf who burned Lannisport and humbled the lion. But beneath the harp strings and horn calls, knives were being sharpened. The wedding feast that should have bound him to the Freys was now denied, and another, darker feast would soon be laid. Still, Robb pressed on. If Tywin rides east, let him. We'll hold the Riverlands and strike when he turns his back. He called banners to Riverrun, commanded fords to be fortified, and sent scouts northward, praying for word of Winterfell. Grey wind prowled the walls restless, as though the beast could scent betrayal on the wind. Even when men's lips smiled and their cups were raised in cheer, for all his victories, Robb had sewn a thorn into his own crown. The songs did not sing of such things, but the gods and men alike remembered broken vows. The phrase mutters grew into whispers, and whispers into daggers. Lord Walder nursed his insult like a wound, and when Tywin Lannister's letters promised gold, pardon, and power, the choice was easy. A wedding feast would be the snare, and northern blood would be the price. Roose Bolton, cold as the weeping water, listened too closely, weighing his fortunes. And in the end he leaned where victory seemed most certain, at the twins. Robb Stark came with banners, still proud. The Riverlords filled the halls, wine flowed, and the songs rose high. But in every corner, eyes glittered too sharply, smiles lingered too long. Catelyn Stark felt it first, the dread crawling her spine when the doors closed and the music changed. grey wind howled from his pen, frantic, but steel was already being drawn. The slaughter was swift, merciless. Arrows fell from the rafters, knives slipped between ribs, and cups of wine were dashed redder than blood. The great John roared and cut down 3 before they brought him low. Small folks screamed as spears pinned them where they sat. At the high table, Robb staggered, struck by bolts, yet still clutched his sword. "The North remembers," he gasped, though his crown was slipping, his strength fading. Catelyn, wild with grief, seized the nearest Frey girl and begged for her son's life, but Lord Walder only sneered. A blade flashed, and with it ended the song of the young wolf. Mother and son died beneath the same roof, betrayed by those they had once called kin. When the fires burned low and silence returned, the hall was strewn with corpses and broken banners. Outside, the wolves lay slain, grey wind riddled with quarrels, his death howl echoing across the dark fields. The river lapped at its banks as if to wash away the crime, but some stains are not so easily cleansed. The news spread like storm winds. The Wolf King was dead, the North broken, the Riverlands bled dry. Tywin Lannister sat in his halls with quiet satisfaction, knowing gold had bought him what swords could not. Yet in the ashes of song and hope, seeds of vengeance took root. Men and women whispered that the debt of blood would one day be paid, that the lion's debt to the wolf was not yet settled. The North remembered. Always.